Imagine that you are traveling by train. You are sitting, thinking about your life, and then... Or imagine that you are a train driver, and you see in front of you this. Unbelievable, right? This is Ukraine. My name is Oleh, and this is podcast about the life of Ukrainian railway during the war. In the next 10 minutes, I will summarize all the most important things and add my own feelings about what is happening in my country. This is a completely new format for me, so please like this video, subscribe to this channel, share your thoughts in the comments, or suggest new topics for next podcasts. So, let's get started. The war began at about 4 a.m., followed by massive missile strikes on cities. Many people woke up to the horrible sounds of explosions. February 24 for me was probably the worst day I ever had. It is very difficult to describe my feeling the day because everyone was shocked. No one could understand the scale of the war. You read that the troops are moving to Kiev, and your mind just refuses to understand this. So on that day, or even on those first days, it was really impossible to make any plans, because in front of you, the horror of something terrible happening. But railway system did not stop. Trains continued to run, and the following days became perhaps one of the most difficult. In those days, we all had a lot of emotions that we had never felt in our lives. And this means the emergence of panic. Looking ahead, I want to say that it is really incredible that the first days of the war in Ukraine were quite controlled, without complete chaos. This is a very important aspect that has helped Ukraine a lot, I'm convinced. However, from the first day of the war, a large-scale evacuation of people began. I will only remind you that the number of people who had to be evacuated in the shortest possible time reached not thousands, but millions. Railway took on a major role in the evacuation process. An incredible number of people left their homes. People traveled by regular and special trains from all over the east, south, north and Kiev. Mostly without tickets. Station trains were crowded with luggage, children and even with pets. They often had to travel even in the corridors of carriages. Honestly, in those days it was completely indifferent. The main thing was to leave dangerous cities as soon as possible. In those days, railway transported passengers with all rolling stock that could be used. These were not only standard passenger carriages of night trains, but also suburban trains, diesel and intercity trains. This photo from the Kharkiv railway station has become very popular, but it is a small illustration of the scale of what was happening. Train schedule was completely out of order, as trains run at limited speeds, could have unplanned stops, or could even change their route to the final destination. Trains run with shuttered windows and no lights, so as not to attract attention. Also, there were a huge number of special trains that were scheduled a few hours before departure. Despite the danger, evacuation trains successfully transported people. But there have also been accidents like this one, which happened on March 13 with evacuation train from Kramatorsk to Lviv. Train was damaged by an airstrike. One conductor died. During the first month of the war, Ukrainian railways evacuated 3 million people. Another 500,000 people were evacuated by trains abroad. And this is only for the first month. Lviv, the largest city in western Ukraine, it is located 80 kilometers from the border with Poland, has become a huge hub for people fleeing the war. The story about the workers of Lviv railway station, about the volunteer teams, definitely deserves a special podcast. They are real heroes who stayed to work in the most difficult days. I personally know many stories when people worked a whole month without days off. They operated trains, transported people and humanitarian goods, and most importantly, proved once again that the railway would not stop for even a second. It may seem pathetic to someone, but I remember my condition at that time, and I'm well aware of how difficult it was for them to work in great danger, especially away from their families. And what about the trains that evacuated people abroad? During this time, so many interesting international routes were born, which we could not imagine until February 24th. But now a little theory. As you know, the railway system in Ukraine uses a wide gauge track 15-20 mm. Standard gauge in Europe is 14-35 mm. This 85 mm difference creates huge problems for railways, and this is a serious reason that extremely limits international traffic. Because if Ukrainian train wants to go to Europe, or vice versa, you need to change baggage at the border. This is a long process. So how did we solve this problem? And the answer is, we have not solved this problem in any way. Because this is a problem that cannot be solved in a few days. Therefore, all other possibilities were used, and especially parts of the broad gauge railways from the border to Helm and Przemysl. First of all, in the first month of the war, a wide gauge track from Ukraine to the Polish city of Helm began to be actively used. Helm is located 25 kilometers from the border of Ukraine and Poland. Regular and special trains have appeared on the routes between Lviv and Helm, which were operated by new diesel trains, the PKR-2, produced in Ukraine. Also, there were direct night trains from Kyiv and Dnipro to Helm. On the other route, from Lviv to Przemysl, trains generally run every few hours, even at night. Rolling stock on this route was ordinary Ukrainian suburban trains. Przemysl is less than 100 kilometers from Lviv and has probably become the busiest passenger hub between Ukraine and Poland. Also, many humanitarian goods from our European friends were transported in passenger carriages to Ukraine. Like these railway workers and students of Railway Technical School from Wrocław who organized a transfer of humanitarian aid for their colleagues, railway workers of Ukraine. Many thanks to all Poles for their help in those dark times. That's really very touching. On February 28th, another very interesting thing happened. The first passenger train from Lviv arrived in Olkush. It's super interesting because Olkush is located at a distance of 378 kilometers from the border of Ukraine and Poland on the LHS railway, or Linia Hutnicza-Szarkotorowa in Polish language. It is the longest wide gauge railway in Poland, used for freight transportation only. Regular passenger service stopped there more than 20 years ago. That's very unusual to see such a long passenger train from Ukraine abroad, because before the war, the longest international night train had only 5 carriages from Kyiv to Warsaw, or 3 from Kyiv to Vienna. And I do not count the 2 intercity trains from Kyiv to Przemysl because they are day trains. That's really fascinating that both railway administrations from Ukraine and from Poland managed to launch this connection so quickly. I hope that after the end of the war, there will be a passenger service between Ukraine and Poland on the LHS railway, as this is a great opportunity to travel by train to Poland without wasting time on changing baggage at the border station. Another interesting evacuation route was from Odessa to Romania. Train went all night from Odessa to Izmail in the south of Ukraine, where a free transfer was organized for everyone on a passenger boat on the Danube River to the city of Tulcea or to the port of Exactia in Romania. Additional transport facilities were also provided by the Slovak and Hungarian railways in the connection with the Chop and Mukachevo stations in the Transcarpathian region of Ukraine. Frequencies and the number of carriages on the border trains from Cherno na Tisov, Chop, and from Zahon to Chop were increased with the possibility of further travel to Košice, Bratislava, Prague, Budapest, Vienna, etc. It was a big stress for Ukrainian railway. Personally, I was pleasantly surprised by the speed of decision making. This is truly commendable.
Hi, it's Boris Johnson here, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I'm travelling on a fantastic Ukrainian Railways train through to Kiev from Poland. And I just want to say a massive thank you to all the staff of Ukrainian Railways for what you're doing.
Do you think politicians traveling by rail are a thing of the past? No. We know that government delegations always travel by air. But what to do when air travel is impossible? This is the golden time for the railway. Many of our foreign partners have chosen railway transport to travel to Kyiv. A typical passenger of Ukrainian railways looks like this, or this, or even this. As you can see, traveling by train to Kyiv has become very popular among so many European and not only politicians. To be honest, for us in Ukraine it no longer has such a wow effect, because every week we see more and more new photos of various politicians from Central Railway Station in Kyiv.
Hi there, this is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada, and I really want to take a moment to say thank you to all the railway workers of Ukraine.
So, the passengers of Ukrainian railways were presidents of Poland, France, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Slovakia, Spain, Romania, and so many others. United States Secretary of State, President of the European Commission, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Canada, Italy, Netherlands, Denmark, Australia, Finland, Croatia, Ireland, Czech Republic, Slovenia, and so many others. If you notice, the interior of the carriages in the photos are not very similar to the usual sleeping car of Ukrainian railways. To transport special guests, Ukrainian railways uses special carriages that have their own shower, kitchen, and large beds. I really hope that after the end of the war, we will see many interesting stories about these trips, because I think no railway company in the world transported so many special guests in such a short time. This is another proof that even in wartime, railway remains a safe and reliable mode of transport. The end of July is outside the window. The fifth month of the war is going on. Russian barbarian troops were driven from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and the entire north up to Kharkiv. Major battles are now taking place in the east and south of the country. The refugee situation has stabilized, but now railway has another very serious threat. And this threat is not new. And again, I'm talking about missile strikes. Russians have been launching missile strikes all over Ukraine since the first day of the war, and since missile resources are not limitless, it has recently become clear that railway is one of priority targets. From open sources, we know of dozens, if not more, missile strikes on the railway. They hit the most affected areas. First it was bridges, then electrical substations were added. To better understand the scale of what is happening, here is the small example. In Odessa region, there is a single track railway bridge across the Dniester estuary in which Russians launched missiles 7 times. 7 times. According to the local military administration, this bridge is not working and needs repair. On April 25th, a missile attack took place on 5 railway stations in the center and west of Ukraine. On May 4th, a similar attack took place in Lviv and Zakarpattia regions, damaging infrastructure and power substations in all these cases. So, why does enemy do that? Obviously, they want to stop the railway network, but I want to say that these stupid and aggressive desires will remain only in their dreams. As difficult as it may be for us, the railway and people are adapting. Repairs are being carried out as soon as possible. Another story. At the end of March, when Russian troops were still trying to take Kyiv into the circle, they blew up 2 bridges on the Kyiv-Korstyn railway line in the suburbs of Kyiv in the city of Irpin. As a result of the explosion, both bridge trusses collapsed and railway traffic became impossible. A week later, Russians were already fleeing from Kyiv. After the liberation of these territories, traffic on this railway was resumed in just 1 month. First train passed the bridge on May 7th. By the way, the infamous Bucha is located also on this railway line. Sometimes missiles hit directly into the railway tracks. Thus, on March 5th, a missile hit the track near Irpin city. As a result, evacuation trains were derailed. Fortunately, carriages were empty and casualties were avoided. However, these carriages stood there for a month until Russian troops were pushed back to Ukrainian's state border. It also happens that missiles do not explode. This happened on March 1st in the middle of Kharkiv station. This time it was lucky and station remained intact. This is just a small part of all damage that has happened in the last 5 months. Unfortunately, missile strikes do not end. That's very sad considering how many resources and time it takes to recover. Once again, I would like to thank all the railway workers who are repairing the infrastructure day and night. Despite such incredible trials, I'm extremely proud of my country. We were not confused. We rallied even stronger. Yes, that's very difficult for us, especially to those who are currently defending Ukraine in the east and south. I don't know how long the war will last, but I'm confident that we will win and Russia will be defeated. I also want to thank all our foreign friends for supporting Ukraine in such difficult times. That's really nice to feel that the whole civilized world is worried about us. That's very motivating, and thanks for each of you. And finally, I urge you to support the channel on Patreon. I plan to make more videos to tell you about things happening in Ukraine, and I have prepared special gifts for new patrons of my channel. Attentive viewers have probably already noticed that I have 2 envelopes and 1 Ludmila on the table. The first one is from my collection. that's about locomotive building industry in Ukraine and were issued in 2011. Here we can see Lyudmila, a legendary locomotive produced in Luhansk from 1970 up to 1981 and operated mostly in Germany. Second envelope and stamps are real historical souvenirs. In Ukraine, people stood in huge queues to buy them. These stamps are about a phrase that young Ukrainian border guards said on the air on a small island in the Black Sea to a large swarm ship that threatened to destroy them. He said, "Russian warship, go f*** yourself." This story and phrase has become legendary. Very funny, but this ship, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, which is also called Moscow, the same time after that was completely sunk by Ukrainian defenders, and now is lying somewhere at the bottom of the Black Sea. I will send these 2 envelopes to 2 new patrons of my channel, which will be selected by the random number generator in exactly 1 week. Link to my Patreon is in the description of this video and in the first comment. Thank you for your support. Also, I urge you to support Armed Forces of Ukraine. Link to the Ukrainian largest charity fund Come Back Alive is in the description and in the first comment. This was my first experience with podcasts, so if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your thoughts with me in the comments. You can also suggest different topics for discussions in the comments. So, love Ukraine, support Ukraine, we will stand and we will win. Thank you for watching and see you next time.